A plane that was iconic for its time, but is now undeservedly forgotten. A plane that was the last triumph of piston airliners, overshadowed by jets. A plane that introduced a new level of comfort in air travel, and was loved by passengers and crew, but was an actual nightmare for operators and a major commercial failure for the manufacturer. Hey aviators and frequent flyers, I'm Jumbo Jet Aviation and welcome to my channel. It's time to grab some tea and snacks as we dive into the wonderful world of vintage aviation and talk about Boeing 377 Stratocruiser. The story of this beautiful aircraft began during the World War II from the development of its military brother known as C-97 Stratofreighter. The US Air Force needed a large capacity transport aircraft capable of moving troops, equipment and supplies over long distances. The new aircraft had to be flexible in operation and able of performing a wide range of tasks, from delivering cargo to evacuating injured soldiers. Boeing had very limited resources and time, but the realities of war set their own rules. The engineers came up with a simple idea. Hey guys, what if we take the B-29 Super Fortress, stretch the fuselage into a double bubble shape, install more powerful engines, and finally add a taller vertical stabilizer? Sounds familiar, right? That's pretty much what Tupolev did later with the Tupolev Tu-104 and Tupolev Tu-114. This approach helped Boeing reduce development time significantly. Work on the C-97 began in 1942. The new aircraft first flew in November 1944 and entered service in 1947. The war ended in 1945, leaving behind a completely new world, a world in need of passenger air travel. The industry grew so fast that airlines urgently needed new aircraft. Manufacturers like Lockheed and Douglas could offer to operators their latest commercial planes, the legendary Lockheed Constellation and Douglas DC-6. The market was expanding rapidly and showed big potential, so Boeing decided not to stay behind and set out to develop its own transcontinental airliner. C-97 was chosen as the base for the new aircraft, development of which began in late 1945, and soon the company received its first order for 20 aircraft from Pan Am. Less than 2 years later, in June 1947, the brand new Boeing took to the skies for its maiden flight. In this video, I won't focus too much on deep technical aspects of this aircraft, especially since it shares a similar platform and technical solutions with its ancestor. Instead, let's take a closer look at the main feature of Boeing 377, the level of comfort it offered to passengers at the time, a time that was truly the golden age for the commercial aviation. This gigantic piston airliner had 2 decks, which sounds absolutely crazy for a freaking plane from 1940s. The upper deck was the main one, housing all passenger seats, while the lower deck was much smaller, divided by the wing in the center, serving as a luggage compartment in the front, but having something much more interesting on the back: an actual bar, bowling, casino, a spa salon. Okay, maybe not those last 3, but you get the idea. This aircraft was absolutely ahead of its time. No, seriously, just think about it. Over 6 years before Emirates introduced similar lounges aboard the A380s, this old legend was already having it. But let's return upstairs to the main deck. It could sit up to 100 passengers in its dense configuration, around 30 in its most luxurious night bed layout. Passengers could enjoy delicious meals cooked on board, in forward galley, a very spacious cabin, and large circular windows, or square windows. Wait, Northwest Airlines and United ordered their planes with old-school rectangular windows. A few years later, similar windows would be the reason why British comets tore apart mid-air like paper tissues, but it's completely other story. The Stratocruiser's history of operation began on the 1st of April 1949 with a Pan Am flight from San Francisco to Honolulu. Very soon those planes became flagships in Pan Am's fleet, serving the most transatlantic and Pacific routes, connecting the continental United States with Hawaii, Europe, Australia, and Latin America. After Pan Am, new planes joined the fleets of airlines like United, Northwest, American Overseas Airways, and the only airline outside of the United States, the British flag carrier BOAC. But not everything went so smooth. Being the most luxurious and technically advanced airliner in the industry, the Stratocruiser was never destined to achieve commercial success. The legacy of a military bomber did not benefit the passenger airliner. Big fuel consumption, high maintenance costs, and infrastructure requirements made its operation completely unprofitable and discouraged airlines from buying the plane. Boeing 377 was an expensive, luxurious toy rather than a workhorse able to make money. It served as a flagship working for airline reputation rather than finances. But the main enemy of this airliner was it still hurt: its engines. It was powered by four 8-cylinder Pratt & Whitney waste major, the apogee of the piston engine era. Biggest and most powerful piston motors ever built. But they had one small problem: they were extremely unreliable and had tons of defects. Frequent failures were an inescapable reality of the Stratocruiser's operation. Often planes reached Hawaii with 3 or even 2 working engines. But reliability was the smallest evil. Aviators struggled with those motors. Failures in critical structures like propellers or engine mounts could turn every flight into a bloody fight for survival. So human losses were not long in coming. In September 1951, a United Airlines plane faced a failure of engine number 4 during approach in San Francisco. It was enough to cause a serious thrust imbalance. The airliner went into a stall from a low altitude and crashed into the water, ending the lives of all 3 crew members on board. This was just the beginning of a series of incidents caused by engine defects. The deadliest of them happened a year later, in April 1952. Pan American Airways Flight 202 ended in disaster after the structural failure of one of its engines. The aircraft crashed in the Amazon jungles. Nobody could survive. Through the entire operational history of this airplane, 13 out of 56 Stratocruisers were lost in various incidents, taking the lives of 129 people in total. 1/4 of the entire fleet was lost. This statistic sounds terrifying, even in the context of less than perfect aviation safety of the time, but even among dark pages of aviation history, there is a bright streak. Pan Am Flight 6 en route from Honolulu to San Francisco lost 2 of its 4 engines about a couple of hours into the flight, high above the Pacific Ocean. With no chance of reaching land, the crew made the only possible decision: an emergency ditching. The impact severely damaged the aircraft structure, but thanks to the skills of the pilots and the presence of nearby US Coast Guard ship, all 31 people on board survived. Rescuers swiftly retrieved the passengers and crew from the ocean, turning a potential disaster into an incredible survival story. At the time when Americans were working on their piston aircraft, engineers on the other side of the Atlantic were preparing something completely new. Something that would change the industry once and for all. In the same month of the same year, at the Stratocruiser, in July 1949, the Havilland Comet took off for the first time. She became the world's first jet-powered passenger aircraft. At the time, jet technology was something untested and unreliable, and many aviators were skeptical about it. But despite all doubts, one fact was undeniable: the future had arrived. The 1950s and 1960s were marked by a massive expansion of jetliners on long-haul, prestigious international routes, ones that had previously been the Stratocruiser's domain. While most all-piston airliners like the Constellation or DC-6 continued flying on less popular regional lines, Boeing 377 couldn't adapt to the new realities. It was simply easier to write off these outdated and problematic dinosaurs than to keep them flying. 1963 became the final chapter in the Stratocruiser's short commercial career. After retirement, most of planes were scrapped, but not all. A few were purchased by the Israel Air Force and converted into military transport aircrafts, similar with the C-97 Stratofreighter, and were remaining in service until the late 1970s. But some Stratocruisers had far more interesting fate. In the mid-1960s, NASA was working on the Apollo program. One major challenge they faced was logistics. Many contractors building companies for their rockets were scattered across the nation. NASA needed fast and efficient transportation to get these massive rocket parts to the launch site. That's when a company called Aerospace Lines came up with a solution. They decided to create an aircraft with an enormous cargo hold using old C-97 and Stratocruiser airframes. The planes were given an extended fuselage and brand new more powerful turboprop engines. And what did we end up with? A B-29 after visiting to grandmother's house. Well, VT was never this aircraft's strong suit, but it was without a doubt one of the most unique planes ever built. Wanna hear a fun fact? In the 1970s, Airbus Industries actually bought a few of these planes to transport fuselages of the Airbus 300. Yes, you heard that right. Airbus was actually flying Boeing aircraft until they were replaced by the Belugas. And as of the time I'm making this video, one Super Guppy is still in service with NASA, so if you ever spot this airplane at an airport, don't laugh at its appearance. Instead, give a note to the last flying descendant of the legendary B-29. Thank you for your attention, aviators. If I missed any points or you just have something to add, you're always free to do this in the comments below.